All right, we're recording now. I just want to let you know I'm recording.
Oh,
And I really appreciate you doing this because it's I tried to interview a bunch of people around this topic, and not everyone is willing to talk to me. So I really appreciate you doing it.
you're welcome.
Let's just start set the scene so like when people listen to this, we know what we're talking about. So we're talking about obviously the Nimitz encounter, the so-called Nimitz encounter.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It was several days. We were operating off the coast of Southern California in our military operating areas, doing getting ready to go on deployment. And for several days, I've been watching these weird contacts off the coast of Catalina Island. And the reason why I say they were weird, Nick, is because our ballistic missile defense guys was tracking these things coming down from outer space. I found out later that wasn't the view that I had on my radar. I'm more concerned with 30,000 feet and below, and
Hmm.
they would go from 80,000 feet, then suddenly drop to 28,000 feet, and they were going south at about 100 knots, which is really weird for something that high in the sky to go that slow. What in the hell flies like that? I've been sitting behind that radar for 18 years on three different ships behind this 5-1 radar. I had never seen anything fly like that. And I
Right.
was convinced it was some sort of a glitch in the system. I was like, hey, we need to run diagnostics, reload the systems. And I wasn't really concerned from a defense point of view because as far as I knew, it was something entirely civilian and they didn't know we were down there. But we continued to monitor them. And on the day that Commander Frater did his intercept, I'd probably already seen 60 of these things. If you counted them
Wow.
all, they appeared in 5 to 10 at a time. And I thought it was some sort of system error until he intercepted one of them. And at that moment, I became convinced they were actually real objects. But what they were, I don't know. I'm the same as you on that, Nick. I don't know
Yeah.
what
No.
they were.
Yeah. And you just asked me what I thought they were. My
Yeah.
feeling, I think, overall, just like lay all my cards on the table, is
Okay.
that I think that the radar contacts you saw were radar glitches. Now, obviously, this is just me being a completely non-expert
And I
on
did
these
too.
types of
I,
things.
I did too. Yeah, I really
Yeah,
did.
and
Well,
what I think
but
about
what did
the
Commander?
rest of yeah, Commander Fravus thing. Yeah, what I think, I'm obviously more skeptical, and I'm coming at this from a skeptical perspective because I'm not really a big
Good.
believer in
Good
aliens
for you.
visiting the Earth,
Good
or
for you.
even like what you describe as non Newtonian physics. I think it's obviously possible that there's something out there that's really unusual, but I personally need fairly strong evidence, and I think you being
I
there on the
respect that.
day for
Just
you,
so you
obviously,
know.
it's
Yeah,
a
I
lot more
respect your.
significant. Yeah. So let me just. I got like a few questions. I want because really what I'd like to do is try to kind of resolve some of the I guess some of the confusions or the conflicting accounts of what went on because sometimes they talk about one thing and then someone else describes it in a slightly different way. And I think perhaps people haven't been digging in deep enough to resolve these questions. So
Oh,
I'd really like to talk about things in some depth about what actually happened over those few days.
oh,
And I think the first question, just to set the story straight, is how many days was this happening over?
it's about 10 days or so. Over to ten
Okay,
days.
so the main encounter with David Fravor was on November the 14th. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
And so, was there anything that happened after the
We
14th?
can. We can. Yes, we continue to track other groups after that encounter. But not as many. If I counted up all the groups together over that 10-day period, it was probably 100 different contacts. They
Okay.
appeared in groups of 5 to 10 at a time, eh, seemingly randomly. I mean, you should have heard the ship's general announcing system. Senior Chief Day, your presence is requested in combat, like all day, all night. It was
Right.
a long 10 days.
So you were like the main guy, like manning the radar
Captain,
system.
yeah, the, the senior guy for air defense, in addition to the captain, obviously.
Okay. So
on the listed side of the house.
you reported directly to the captain, Captain Smith, I think his name was.
Captain Smith, correct. Who
Yeah.
was strangely never came out one way or the other on this. I think I think he has a job with the UN and probably concerned about that to some extent, or I'm not sure what his mindset is, but even at the time, he had problems accepting this. I asked him, I said, Nick, I asked him, hey, sir, what do you think these things were? And you know what he told me? He said it was spontaneously forming ice from space. And I actually laughed at him, and oh, sorry, sir, I didn't mean to laugh at you. I kind of caught myself there. It was ridiculous to me. That
Did he
explanation.
actually say like from space though?
That's what he
That seems a bit
said.
odd.
That's what he said. Well, because we
Huh.
had our ballistic missile defense guys tracking these things coming from space, and then
Right. So that's
they
one of the
just
things
said
I wanted
about
to ask you
8,000.
about.
Yeah,
Yeah, you said the ballistic missiles defense guys were tracking them coming from space.
right.
Uh, was this something that you were aware of at the time?
No, I was not. I was not. I was. It was not my focus, and it wasn't where my head was at that time. It
So
totally watched
how did you find out about this ballistic missile
later on.
defense?
Yeah, in the next couple of days, talking to the guys on the ships.
Okay. And
Maybe we can do this again. I can get a couple of the other guys to
yeah,
join.
that would be
But
interesting.
you're going to ask me some questions I don't have answers to because it wasn't my position.
Right.
And
Yeah. So what I want to do is clarify everything you know about this.
Okay.
All right. So you said like I was trying to get narrow down the days that it happened. So it kind of centers around the 14th, which is the Fravor and the Underwood encounter. And you say it happened for a few days after that and a few days before. Do you know? Can you
The best of my
pinpoint?
recollection, it went from about the 4th of November to about the 15th of November.
Okay.
And I'd have to consult the actual logbooks. If we could get a FOIA them. I think they've
Yeah.
done that already. I'll double check. I owe you an answer on the specific dates.
Yeah.
You got to
No
remember, I'm
worries.
going with long
Oh
old
yeah.
memories now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of one of the problems of the whole thing is that it was in 2004, November 2004, and so I think a lot of people, some of the details are obviously going to be a little bit hazy or even wrong at this point.
Yeah. Honestly, so I mean, I don't think anyone's.
Oh yeah,
I
it's
don't think
completely
anyone's
to be
lying about this.
expected.
Yeah.
No,
I
no, and
really
I don't think so either. I mean, like from from everybody I've talked to, I haven't talked to that many people, but I've listened to a lot of the interviews. I talked to Gary Voorhis, and I've talked to a few people kind of online, just chatting. And I think everybody that I know of is giving their honest recollection and their honest interpretation of what they saw on those days.
I know I can speak for myself. I know I am, and
Right,
I want
course.
to know. I still want to make this ID, man, because that was my whole job, was to identify everything that flew.
Right.
And I have yet to make this ID, and I still want to.
So what you saw, like what was the very first time you saw something that was strange?
It was on or about the 4th of November. I was up on watch. It was an evening watch, probably 8 p.m. at night, 2000 in military time. And I noticed, I believe there was 5 contacts the first time I saw it right off the coast of Catalina. They're at 28,000 feet. And there's some way they caught my attention because they were going 100 knots, which is really slow for something that high in the sky. We didn't have the air wing on board the carrier yet, on board the Nimitz. And, we were down off getting ready for the air wing to arrive in a couple of days. And I wasn't really concerned from a defense perspective because, as far as I knew, this was something completely civilian related, and they didn't even know we were down there. They had no idea we were even there. So it was something that I started to monitor at that point, just because the formations were so strange. And again, at this point, I wasn't aware that the ballistic missile defense guys had tracked these things from outer space. I had no idea about that. It was above my clearance, basically above my security clearance.
So when you see these things, they're at 28,000 feet, 100 knots. off the coast of Catalina. How does that actually show up on your radar screen or
Oh,
your display
we
screen?
very we very seldom look at raw radar. Everything
Hmm.
is if I get a contact, there's a symbol that comes up in our system automatically, for the most part, automatically ID things using all of our systems and sensors, and it'll create a symbol on the scope. And it's based on the sine wave. Like part of the sine wave is an air contact. The whole thing is a surface contact, and the bottom part of the sine wave would be a submarine contact.
Okay.
And you take that symbol, and it's got a vector on it. Like if it's
Uh-huh.
tracking down this way, the length of the vector will show me the relative speed. And if I click on it, I'll have all the information. I actually look at the contact, and it pops up on the scope, and I can see everything I need to see about the contact. But it's all based on symbology.
Yeah. So would it come up as a kind of an unknown contact
Yeah,
then?
it came back as a square sheet, top of the sine wave for unknown.
Okay.
It was
Uh, and but it did it tell you what the speed was? The 100 knots?
oh yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so
the
it
altitude
could
and the
detect
speed.
that.
Yeah,
And they were heading south from Catalina Island.
like heading south. Now the interesting thing is they all appeared just off the coast of Catalina Island, and they tracked past us, between us and the mainland, and they all disappeared off my scope in the same point in the sky, right above Guadalupe Island off the coast of
Mm.
Mexico. Which is why Lou Elizondo, when he came to interview me, as soon as that came out of my mouth, he was like, "I'm going there," and he did. He went down to Guadalupe Island and on that first show he did on Unidentified, and that's how that came about happening. I
So
think that was kind of odd. They all disappeared at the same point in the sky.
yeah, and did they all appear in the same point in the sky?
They did. Yep, just off the
So they
coast
kind
of
of
Catalina.
sprung into existence just off the coast. Well, just south of Catalina, was it?
It was about midway down the island.
Okay. Uh, and then they traveled from Catalina to Guadalupe, and they passed between your group, well, I guess the Princeton, and the mainland.
That's correct. Yep.
All right. How long did you track one individual for?
Um, that's a good question. I could do the math in my head. It was 100 knots, and it was probably what is it, 250 miles, a couple hours easily.
All right.
Each,
So you could see
yeah,
them all the way from Catalina,
yeah. I
and
had
was it?
to, our when we get a contact, the system grades it on the quality of the radar,
Mhm.
and I had the highest system track quality on these contacts the entire time, the
And
highest quality possible.
and they showed up in groups.
It's a 5 to 10 each.
Okay. Were they always in groups or were they sometimes
Always, always
individually?
in groups.
Okay.
Always in groups. In fact, the only time
Yeah.
they ever broke formation was when Commander Fravor intercepted one of them. And that one that he intercepted, I drove him to the point in the sky at 28,000 feet. And as soon as he got what we call the merge plot position, which is two objects in the same vertical piece of sky, and on a two-dimensional display, it looks like one, they've merged. It's called merge plot.
Mm-hmm.
Can't distinguish them anymore. As soon as he was at that point in the sky, this object went from 28,000 feet down to the surface of the ocean. I found out the next day in 0.78 seconds. From 28,000
Uh,
feet down to the surface of the water in less than a second. No sonic boom.
the
No sonic boom.
yeah. I don't want. I'll get to that in a second. I just want to talk about these groups, like because you said you vectored out Commander Fravor to one of them. Now, was that part of a group?
Yeah, it was part of a group. If I could,
Uh,
the sense that I had when I was looking at these things, if you could imagine snow flakes falling in a calm winter day, and they kind of slowly, that's how they tracked down the scope. They just kept their relative positions to each other, and they very slowly made their way from north to south on the radar.
so, like you're talking about how they kind of moved on the screen. It was like snow coming
Yeah,
down. down the
exactly
screen,
like that. Yeah,
almost like a
yeah,
screensaver or
exactly what
something.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. And so they stayed in the same
Very,
relative position the entire time?
yep. They weren't going like this or nothing. They stayed the same from each other
Yeah.
the whole entire time, but almost like they were tied together.
What, how spaced out were they in this group? How big is the group?
You're
Like the
asking me some
typical space
details now.
between two of them?
The, uh, a number of miles, probably 5 miles, if I had to
Okay.
guess, because I don't recall. To be honest with you, but
Yeah.
it wasn't like 100 miles apart. It was a pretty tight group, and they stayed in the same relative positions to each other the entire time. And they weren't. Go ahead.
When you're looking at the screen, you've, I guess, you've got a big overview map as well. So you could see like Catalina at the top and Guadalupe at the bottom, and
Well,
or were you more zoomed in on the region?
I zoomed out the entire time. I can zoom in and
Okay.
out all I want.
So when you
Yep.
were zoomed all the way out, could you still distinguish between the individual objects in the group?
Yeah, yeah. It was individual contexts. You
Okay.
could hook them,
So they were,
hook them all independently. When I
yeah,
say
so they
hook,
were
it's
pretty
like
spaced out.
you take your mouse and you click on it, and the
Yeah.
information about the content pops up. We call it hooking.
Okay. Did you? I mean, I guess you were trying to figure out what they were at the time, and you thought balloons might have been a thing. I think you mentioned that at one point.
Yeah, I was. I either thought it was some sort of a system error or it was something civilian related, like balloons, and they didn't even know we were down there. I wasn't even remotely thinking aliens, just so you
Well,
know.
no.
And at the time, I wasn't even thinking. I wasn't even thinking UFO. It just wasn't what I was thinking. I'm, I'm pretty skeptical of myself.
Yeah. Like, did it look like it was kind of artificial? I mean, you described it like snow drifting down the screen, which almost makes it look like sounded like something that's overlaid on top of the screen rather than something that's really there.
They behave like normal contacts in terms of the
Okay.
symbology and stuff. It was just another contact I had. It wasn't commercial airliners. I know that. When you mentioned maps, I got on my display. I can display all the commercial airline routes. And there is no commercial airline route right there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, there's not a lot of traffic. I mean, I've looked that up, and you just occasionally get like a biz jet coming from Mexico or South
yeah,
America, and usually they're going over land rather than over the water in that
correct,
area.
correct. Unless they're going
Uh,
east-west. Yeah,
yeah. Obviously, you do get some going to Asia and Hawaii from places, but yeah. So I guess like the you would have had some kind of military operations area defined there for the fleet, and you have a NOTAM, like a notice to airmen, telling people to stay away.
that's
Do you
correct.
remember when they started? I guess they would have been outside that area. Did they remain outside the area?
No, they traveled right through the Southern California operating area. When I collected them off St. Catalina, of course, that's right up. That's outside the military operating area. But
Mm-hmm.
as you get down the coast farther, right around San Clemente, that's when it turns into a military op area. And
Yeah, San Clemente is like
that
that's like 30 miles south of Catalina, I think, or something, 20, 30 miles. And there's a military base
yeah,
on San Clemente, isn't there?
that's correct. Yep,
Yeah.
the
Yeah, it's
small one.
fascinating.
Before we do our naval gunfire support training, usually when we're shooting our 5-inch guns, there's targets out there, and we'll sit off the coast
Right.
and bombard it. And you got people on the beach calling in the shot, call the shot, doing corrections, and
Sounds like fun.
been out there before.
Yeah. So, yeah, sorry if I keep like reiterating things. I want to make sure I'm clear on exactly what's going on. And yeah, that some of this stuff hasn't been clear to me before. But it's fascinating. Like you're talking about, this formation going from north to south, and you saw this type of thing happen, like, was it like every day for those 10 days?
Yeah, it was every day, and it was sometimes a couple, several times a day.
And so, like, the first day that it happened, you had a group at 28,000 feet going south at 100 knots, and it goes over the carrier group, more or less. We're near the carrier. It was in the what do you call it? The military area.
SoCal operating area.
Okay, the circle. It's in the SoCal operating area, which it shouldn't be if it was a commercial jet or something like that, or even a balloon.
Except the NOTAM.
Was there like any kind of reaction to that from you and other people? Was there any talk about intercepting it on the first day?
Well, we didn't have the air wing available to us until the very last part of this encounter, and as soon as I as soon as I had aircraft that I could use, I talked to Commander Smith. I said, "Hey, sir, we've been tracking these things for several days, and no one in the strike groups has any idea what these are. And we're getting ready to do a big air defense exercise. We're going to launch a bunch of aircraft off the beach, and we're going to launch our guys, and we're going to talk air battle in that same piece of sky. So now I'm concerned about safety of flight because I've got these unknown objects right in our playground area, and I strongly recommend we go intercept one and see what they are. So if there's not some sort of an air-to-air mishap, because if there is, we're going to ask both you and you why we were so damn curious about these things." And he looks at me and goes, "You're right. So you're Chief Intercept One," and that's how Commander Fast Eagle was up. Fast Eagle 01. He was the first one to launch, and we immediately took him under control because EW Hawkeye radar plane did not have any radar on these things, only we did. And we drove them to the closest contact, and that's when it all happened.
So, but say 10 days earlier, let's say if that happened on the 14th, and you saw them first on the 4th, like why?
I had no way to enter. I had no way to enter. Huh?
But I mean, wasn't it serious though?
No. I mean, there's all kinds of aircraft off the coast. I can't intercept everything just because.
Okay.
And I had no way to do it anyway. I mean, we were reporting to the beach over our data links and stuff. So if there was some entity on the beach worried about them, that I didn't know about it. I mean, we were reporting them the whole time because our radar picture goes to the beach. Put it that way.
Yeah.
And people on the beach can see what we're seeing.
Is the beach like the kind of the command center, or like near San Diego or somewhere like that?
Yeah, Commander Third Fleet and FACT San Diego, and there's several different commands that get our radar return if they want to see it in our data link picture.
Yeah. Okay, so you say that
the only reason why I convinced Captain Smith to intercept these things was because I pulled the safety of flight thing on him, and that's really hard to argue with.
Right.
I mean, if we would just ignored it, and we would have launched all these groups of aircraft, and one of our guys hit one of those objects, and we could have gotten in a lot of trouble. That's what I told him.
Right.
Not safe. We need to figure out what this is, so we can either avoid it or cancel the exercise.
Yeah, because at that point you were planning, you were going to launch all of these planes, and they were going to be doing these simulated dogfights and things like that. Yeah,
right about that altitude too.
So before that point, you didn't consider it a danger to the fleet. It wasn't like
not at all.
No,
not even a little bit.
And you still, I guess you're still thinking it might be radar glitches at that point?
I fully thought that's what it was. Leading up to that day, I either thought it was something entirely civilian related, they didn't even know we were down there, none of our business type of thing, or I thought it was some sort of system malfunction.
Right.
I definitely wasn't thinking UFOs. Trust me on that. It wasn't even in my thought process at the time. I would have laughed. In fact, if someone would have said that, I would have laughed.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's
Yeah,
people's
I would have.
general
I'm like you,
reaction.
man.
And
Yeah.
not everybody, though. I mean, a lot of people actually do believe in UFOs, but I think, from a practical point of view, you don't expect to encounter them, especially flying over the fleet.
Especially, yeah. So especially
Yeah.
then, yeah. It wasn't what I
Right.
was thinking. I'll tell you.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about Fravor's encounter. So for safety reasons, you decided that you wanted to intercept one of these things, and you talked to Captain
Right.
Smith and persuaded him. And then
Yep.
I guess there was a set of. Do you remember how many were in the group that you sent him towards?
I believe there was five. And
Okay,
the
so he's in
commander
a
Fravor
group of
intercepted,
five.
and
And
he's in a
did
flight of
you?
two. Yeah.
Okay, so
Two
he's in a
aircraft.
flight of two, and is going
Yeah,
towards a
two
group of
aircraft. Right.
five targets.
Right. Right.
Okay.
And as soon as Commander Fravor, because he had his wing buddy up a little bit higher, they kind of offset
Uh-huh.
vertically a little bit so they can watch each other. As soon as he got to that merge plot position, over the radio, I had the communications dialed up in the speaker up in the Combat Information Center, so everyone was hearing it. He's like, oh my God, I'm engaged, I'm engaged."
Uh-huh.
And when we got back down, it sounded just like that too. When I got back to the beach, I said,
Really?
"What the hell happened, sir?" And he said, "Well, as soon as I intercepted it, it barrel rolled around me and went straight down to the water. And
Huh.
I followed it down, and that's when we saw the disturbance in the water." And he said this little white tic tac looking thing was darting erratically just about 50 feet above the water, and there was something in the water whirling in the water,
So,
which is really
so
far out. I think it
that's
was sea
interesting.
life, my personal. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it was.
the description, I kind of thought that the boiling of the water, it kind of sounded a bit
Yeah.
like like whales feeding or sharks feeding or whatever, feeding frenzy type thing.
And
But hey,
Commander
that's
Flavor comes over the radio. He's like, Charlie, fast equals 01. We may have a downed aircraft here. That's what he said. So we started launching our search and rescue procedures in the whole 9 yards. But as it turns out, it wasn't a downed aircraft.
yeah.
That was
So
his initial thought. He thought it was
so
a downed aircraft.
you said that Fravor told you that he did a barrel roll around him.
Yeah, around his airplane. Yeah.
So this was this was when he first encountered it.
Yeah, when he was engaged with it, it went straight down to the water. According to what he told me when we got back to the beach after the exercise was over.
That's interesting because I don't think you mentioned
I wasn't able to see that on. I didn't see no barrel roll on my display. Yeah, that was his verbal. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just saw it go from 28,000 in less than a second down to the south. From vertically making a vertical movement.
All right, so let me just make sure I got this straight. So Fravor says that he flew to the position where it was. You saw a merge plot with that one thing, and he tells you that at that point it kind of flipped around him and then shot down to the ocean surface.
Correct. Yep.
And was it at that point that he saw the disturbance?
Yes. Yeah, he chased it down. He left his wingman up high.
Okay.
And he chased it down, and that's when he was chasing it down. That thing reacted to him, and that's when he saw the disturbance in the water.
Yeah, I think I must say that's not exactly the order in which he tells it now. Like he says, he first saw the disturbance in the water, and then he saw the tic tac, and then the tic tac came up rather than coming down.
Well, he had chased it down there, but he may have saw the disturbance before he got it. He noticed the things darting around on top of the ocean. I think that's what he was trying to say.
Yeah.
But when he saw that object when he merged with it, that's why he went chasing it down when it dropped down to the surface of the ocean.
So you think that he would have obviously been heading towards, was it 20,000 or 28,000 for that one?
The one he intercepted?
Yeah.
He was at 28,000 feet.
Okay, so like it was just like part of a group of five at 28,000 feet.
Yeah. It was the closest one to us. The lead of the formation. So.
Right. So does that mean the group was north of you at that point?
Yes. Yes. It was well to
And
the north of
coming,
us.
it was to the north of you and coming south,
Correct.
and you
Yeah.
picked the lead of a formation of 5.
Correct.
Okay, that's interesting. And so he flies over to it. Again, I apologize for getting into the weeds here, but I really want to clarify exactly what happened as best as you can recall. So, do you remember? Were you watching it on the radar when it happened? Because you were vectoring
Absolutely.
him there. Yeah. So you
Yeah.
saw the whole thing, the whole merge plot and everything. Do you remember what
Absolutely.
happened to the other 4 in the group when he intercepted the first one?
They just kept coming down.
Huh. So from
Oh,
your perspective, I guess you're in the ship and Fravor has been vectored in from somewhere to this group of 5, and then he merges plot with one of them, and the other 4 keep moving down. What do you see of Fravor? The merged plot. Do you see like 2 overlaid symbols or just one symbol?
two overlay symbols. The unknown and his aircraft, which is a friendly symbol, but now they're right on top of each other at merge plot.
Okay.
But the symbols stay separate. They don't become one symbol. That's what you're asking.
Okay, yeah. So you can still see there's 2 things there. You just can't distinguish where they are relative to each other.
Other than they're in the same vertical piece of sky. That's correct. Yeah. And I'd have to hook on each one to see the altitude difference.
Okay. So could you tell they were at the same altitude when he got there?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
When you intercept something with the Super Hornet or any other type of aircraft, you're going to be co-altitude with what you're intercepting.
All right. Then let me see. So I'm just gonna get this. All right. So for Fravor's encounter, he describes kind of, it's down at the ocean at this point. He's coming down to it. Could you tell by looking at the radar that this was happening?
Of course. Yep.
So you could see.
We're tracking him the whole time. Yes.
Right.
And listening to the comms and everything.
Yeah. And they're in the same vertical piece of sky, but you can still distinguish the difference in altitude between the 2.
Yeah, easily. Yeah.
Right. So you saw when he got there that they were both co-altitude, and then did you see it drop down?
I don't know how else to say it, Nick. Yeah, I'm not sure what words you want me to use to describe it, because I've told you that 4 times already.
Yeah, no, I just wonder what I'm trying to figure out is what exactly you see on the screen. I know you know what happened.
I see symbols, and like if I got a commercial airliner here and a fighter over here, I trackball up to if I want to get information on the fighter, I have to track up to it and click on it, and it displays on my screen. If I want to see the commercial airliner, I do the same thing with that.
Okay.
Click on it. Well, that information, and those 2 symbols remain 2 symbols unless they go off the radar. They never, in other words, if they merge, it doesn't become one symbol now. They remain separate contexts.
Right.
So yes, we were able to watch the whole time as he chased this thing down to the surface of the water.
Yeah. I mean, the reason I'm kind of harping on this point, and I apologize, is that I think for a lot of people, the rapid vertical movement of the object is one of the things that distinguishes it as being like something that's really unusual. And so just understanding how you can determine that from the radar, the symbology, but
that's what radar tracks things, and it was tracking it.
Right. So I was just wondering if, did you have to click on it to get its altitude?
Yeah.
Right. So you wouldn't necessarily see it do the rapid
movements. It's like when you launch an application on your computer, you actually got to click on it.
Yeah.
Same thing with our system. Yeah.
So then, like, after Fravor gets there and he sees it down in the water and goes down, uh, then what happens from your perspective at that point? What do you see and hear?
He comes on the radio and says, Charlie, we may have a downed aircraft here. And we started launching our search and rescue. I was, oh my God, what happened, right? And when I talked to him later, when we got to the beach, he said that that object, that tic tac looking object, he said actually reacted to him. Mm-hmm. And I noticed he was there, and he was probably about miles from his combat aircraft. It's called the CAP point. When we're in strat group operations, we'll have CAP points around the strat group, and they'll station there until something happens. And in this case, that object went from the surface of the water to where they were to his CAP point, about 40 miles away in just several seconds. And again, those sonic booms. And the air controller comes up on the radio and says, sir, you're not going to believe this, but that object, that thing, is that CAP point. And of course, it was stunned silence on the radio at that point. Somehow that object went to the CAP point, and that's also another strange thing about it.
Yeah. That's something that comes up a lot. You hear that. How would it even know that? I mean, is it just a coincidence, or was it deliberate? Is it
I don't see how it could be coincidence.
Reading people's systems. So
either
the movement to the CAP point. Did you after Fravor gets there and there's the merge plot? When was the next time you saw it, like, not merge plot, like separate from Fravor, separate target?
He went back. He started going back to his CAP point, and that object, whatever it was, rejoined its group and just kept going south. And at that point, we called off the exercise at that point.
All right, so let me get this straight. Like there's a group of 5. You intercept 1, merge plot. Then there's little flying around. Fravor's flying around it, trying to figure out what it is, and then it shoots off to his CAP point, like 40 miles away, and then it rejoins the group, and then they all continue south.
Ask that again.
So I just did the recap there of the interception of the group. So you send out Fravor to intercept one of the 5, and he gets to the merge plot, and then he has this kind of little dogfight with it, and then it flies off and ends up at the CAP point, and then later it rejoins the group, and all 5 of them continue south.
Yeah. Pulled off the exercise at that point.
And you canceled the exercise because of...
Again, there was objects in our playground, so I wanted to see what they were. Safety flight flies up to it. The closest one, it drops down. He chases it. He sees it. There's a disturbance in the water. Back to his CAP point, about 40 miles away. So he goes chasing back to the CAP point, and then that object rejoins its original group. And at that point, I'm convinced they're real objects. He has visual idea. Something. It's not a system glitch. It's not a hot air balloon. It's not a commercial airliner. It's something definitely unknown. It's really real. I'm concerned about safety of flight, and Captain, I recommend we cancel the exercise because we got objects in our playground here, and no one knows what they are. And I know they're real. This Commander Fravor just gave me a visual ID saying, "Hey, real object." So we canceled the exercise and just continued to monitor those groups.
Yeah,
as they appeared on board.
It's quite understandable, but
now when Commander Fravor, he's getting short on gas, so he had to return to base, RTB to the carrier, and Lieutenant Chad Underwood was getting ready to launch in the next sortie, right? So he told, hey Chad, make sure you take a infrared forward-looking atmosphere radar equipped jet and try to get these things on film. And Lieutenant Underwood is like, I'm going to go find those things. And that's exactly what he did. He went and that's how that Tic Tac video came into being.
So with Underwood, so this was like what, like an hour after Fravor, was it?
No, it was the next story. I don't want to reveal anything classified, but it was the next launch off the carrier. It wasn't an
Okay,
hour.
so all right, less than an hour then, just roughly. So, did you vector him out to the group of 5 then?
Yeah.
And did you pick the same one, or could you tell which one it was?
We vectored him. Probably the same contact. I don't remember. I don't recall.
Right. But it was to another group.
It was the same group. It was the same group I had on my radar. It was obviously closer to us now. And the second sortie launch, we intercepted it again, and that's where the video came about. We actually did 2 different intercepts that day.
So how close did Chad? How close did Lieutenant Underwood get to that group?
It was almost the merge plot again, if I recall. So it was within the visual arena. He could see it with his eyeballs.
Oh, really? Because I don't think he said I thought he said he just saw it with the camera. Did he get an actual visual on it?
Yeah, he saw both. Yep.
Okay.
According to his testimony.
Right.
Because in order to, he saw it. I'll just leave it at that.
All right. So the video, the video is this famous video which everyone shows. Did you see that at the time? That video? I mean, not well. Did you see it live?
I was watching it on radar live in the that video, that little snippet of video that's 10 seconds long or whatever.
Yeah, like a minute.
That same snippet of video appeared in my email the next morning. Okay. That's why when I saw it in 2017, I was working down at the golf course and I was watching the golf tournament, and all of a sudden I walk out of the kitchen carrying a plate of food, and CNN was on, and hey, turn up. And when I saw the video, I actually the plate of food, I was in such shock because I knew exactly what I was looking at, Nick. I had that same video next morning after this happened. And the interesting thing about the video, let me talk a little bit about procedure, right? Let's say you're the pilot and I'm the controller. I direct you to do an intercept, and you accept it. You'll come back with a statement: "Fight's on, tape's on," which means all your recording devices are turned on from the moment you get the order to intercept until after it's long over. In other words, you don't wait till you're intercepted and only turn it on for 10 seconds and then turn it off. It's left on the entire time. That's why I know there's a longer video. A longer video definitely exists. We just don't turn them on for 10 seconds and turn them off. It never.
Yeah. Well, that video looks like it's from quite a long distance away.
Okay.
Do you think there was a closer up video?
Why does that matter? I don't understand why that matters.
Well, if there's more video, then, and you said he got to the merge plot, which I guess is within a few miles, if not closer, then would there be a closer up shot of the object?
I would have to presume so. I haven't ever seen a longer video. I've only seen the 10-second snippet that we all see. I never have seen the entire video. No. But I know it has. At least I know it. At one point, at least it had to have existed at one point, because that's standard operating procedure. Yeah, you just don't turn it on for 10 seconds and turn it off because something cool just happened. You turn it on and leave it on until your intercept's completely over.
Yeah, I imagine. So, were there? With Chad Underwood's encounter, was this you that was directing him, or you were just part of?
The controller was sitting at the console in front of me, the air controller, and I'm the control supervisor, so I'm on a headset with a really long cord, so I can actually pace all over combat and talk to various watch stations. The actual controller. I won't give his name here because he hasn't come out publicly, but his call sign was Poison. That was he was a junior guy to me, and he was an air controller.
Right. And he was talking to Underwood.
Yeah. He was, talking to on a certain circuit.
You would have been able to hear the conversation, though, I guess.
Yeah. In fact, I had it in the overhead speaker in combat. Everyone was listening to it.
Right. Okay, so we have the Fravor encounter and then the Underwood encounter. Were there other intercepts?
No. Oh, because after Underwood had gone up there and got us film weight, we were in the process of canceling the whole exercise and canceling all the launches and everything because we were gravely concerned about safety of flight at that point. Yeah. Everything got canceled. There was only 2 intercepts.
Okay. Someone was saying something about them scattering when planes got close to them. Is that something that happened?
That's not my memory. No.
Okay. Yeah, I can't remember where I read that now. I got it written down, but it doesn't say who wrote it. All right.
They maintained.
Okay, so they all maintained this. Was it like a really fixed formation, and it wasn't like rotating or spreading out or anything?
It was extremely fixed.
Yeah.
Snowflakes falling on a calm winter day. They kept the same bearing and range from each other the whole time.
Yeah.
All co-altitude go at 28,000 feet.
So with Chad Underwood, how did that end? What was the kind of the resolution of that? Why did he break away from the group?
We were concerned about safety of flight, so we canceled everything.
But wasn't he specifically sent out to intercept?
Because at this point, I was convinced it wasn't a system. It was actually real objects that we were all thinking, hey, something civilian related. Let's stay out of their way until we figure out what the hell this is. And so we canceled everything just for safety of flight reasons. Again, I was never concerned about the military defense. I was concerned about safety of flight.
Yeah, of course. Number one,
something maybe probably civilian was what I was thinking at the time. Again, Nick, I was not thinking UFOs.
Yeah,
it was.
Wow.
I would have physically laughed if someone would have suggested that at the time. I really would have. It would have been humorous to me. I would have. What? You need some sleep. Go have some coffee. Yeah, I really would.
One of the pilots said that they got made fun of when they came back, like they were playing like Men in Black in the there
was cartoons in the strike group newspaper, playing every UFO movie that's ever been created. In the days following, and people wearing tinfoil hats. Yeah.
Oh, I just got a question about Underwood again. Like, so you sent Underwood out to the group, and you and the air traffic controller. Was that like a group of 2, like with Fravor? There's 2 planes.
Things kind of got a little bit confusing because when the second sortie became aware of what was going on in these objects, all of a sudden, independently, I had aircraft going up north too, not under my control. That's why I don't have a lot of situational awareness and what some of the other pilots saw or didn't see. I'd like to talk to some of them, actually. I wish they would come forward and clarify some of this stuff. I really do.
So there were other planes maybe doing...
16 years ago, memories are getting foggy.
Yeah, I know. It's a problem. I said, like, were there other planes that you said that were independent of you that might have done an intercept?
Right. Okay. And again, this is pretty chaotic at this point because we're in the process of canceling the exercise and put out the order for everyone to RTB back to the carrier and just basically get out of the airspace because I was concerned about safety of flight, and my thought at the time, hey, something completely civilian related. I don't know what it is
Uh-huh.
right now, but we'll find out later. Right now, I just want to make sure my aircraft and pilots are safe. So
So did you
cancel
basically
everything.
you canceled everything? But so what
Yeah,
was the
we told them to go back home.
so
Or
after
you
that
know,
happened, after you returned to base on everybody, uh, what was the plan in trying to figure out what these things were?
there wasn't one
Huh.
essentially.
But I mean, surely if you've
I
canceled
mean,
the exercise,
not in that moment. There wasn't one. I mean, what are we supposed to do? You tell
right?
me. Hit them
So
with a
what
missile.
happens? What
We didn't
happened
have
then? And
missiles
did
on this exercise.
yeah?
Nothing.
But I
Nothing.
mean, like, I mean, do you just
We
sit tight
we
on the
stayed out of
ship
the
and don't do
airspace.
anything?
We stayed not at my level. I just continued to monitor the contacts.
Okay. Do you
Out there
think
was some
something
stuff going
else?
on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So you just
The
kind of
intel side
waited.
of the house, the intel side of the house was maybe doing something behind the scenes. I don't know. I wasn't. There was nothing I could have done except for re-intercept it. So what was the point of doing that? I didn't have the aircraft didn't have missiles, didn't have ammunition or the machine guns or anything. So the only thing
Well,
I could
could
do
you
is
have?
track. So we tracked and recorded. We took our data link picture and sent it back to the beach.
Okay. So I guess it's kind of in their hands now, the guys on the beach,
Right, right, yeah.
and they decide.
Maybe the Air Force was doing something. I just that part of the story I don't know. I wish I did.
Yeah.
But all the tools in my bag had been used at that point. There was nothing further I could have done
So
other than
let me,
intercept it again. But we didn't want to do that because if it's some sort of a civilian thing, we don't want to create trouble for ourselves by
yeah.
intercepting it over and over and over again. Because safety of flight comes first.
The plane when it flew to the no, sorry, the object when it moved to the cap point.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see it actually move, or did it just appear there?
We saw it actually move in just several seconds, about 40 miles away.
So you tracked that on the radar
Yes.
from Fravor's position to the cap point.
Back to the cap point. Yeah.
After it got to the cap point, did you track it back to its group?
Yeah, it stayed on the cap point for several seconds, and then it rejoined its original group.
Okay.
And kept going south. So, back to 28,000 feet, back to 100 knots, and kept going south.
So when it went from the cap point to the group, it must have been going really fast, obviously, to get there very quickly. And you tracked that on the radar.
Now you got to remember, I wasn't physically sitting at the radar this entire time. I'm on a really long headset. I'm wandering all over combat.
Uh-huh.
So some of those I wasn't staring at the scope the entire time. I don't have answers to it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm frozen.
Can hear some music in the background there. So,
it's a wind chime.
oh, okay. Sounded like someone playing the xylophone. Okay.
Sounds like what? Shine down. Never mind.
No, I gotta see. It's interesting. Like you started posting about this on Above Top Secret. Was that kind of the first time you told the story, like afterwards, or is it?
The first time I remember saying anything, first of all, no one believed me.
Yeah.
I got off the ship and I ended up going to turned out to be my last command, Commander Naval Air Forces Pacific, just across the Coronado Bay Bridge. And I got clowned, Sure, you intercepted you.
Right.
I became so frustrated with it. Like I actually wrote about it. I called it my story "The Seer," and I fictionalized the whole thing. And I published my short story in the Library of Congress. in February of 2009, just in case the story ever did become public, my
Uh-huh.
story would corroborate it. Because unless I'm a time traveler, how would I do that, right?
Yeah,
And
no, it's a good
my
move.
my my book is now contemporaneous evidence that this really did happen, and that's
Well,
the first. Go ahead.
that was like what, 2007 or something like that?
2009 when I published
2009,
my
yeah.
first book. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can
And
you can download it for free. It's on issu.com, and if you
okay.
type in Sailor's Anthology, you can read it online.
Yeah,
You can
I've,
read
I've
my
I've
short
read
story,
it.
or you can order it on Amazon. It's
Yeah.
published
I mean,
now. It's available on Amazon. And just so you know, all the funds from the book sales are going to fund our expedition coming up next year. We're going back out to SoCal, try to refine these things.
yeah, no, I don't want to talk to you about that as well, because you started this kind of group. Is it a company, I guess? Like
I'd
a
like, I'd like to have you there with us, to be honest with you.
well,
Put that in the
it's in my
put
neck of
that
the
in your
woods.
thinking. It,
Uh,
UAP Expeditions. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. None of us are getting
okay.
paid. Our plan is to have two teams, one on Catalina Island and one on a ship, and we're going to go try to refine these things.
Yeah, so you think it could be a regular
November
thing?
next year. Say again?
You think it could be a
I didn't hear
regular
you.
occurrence?
I think, of course, I'm just guessing like everyone else, but I think there's something between those objects and something in the water. And
Yeah.
because of that, I mean, if I had to pick a time, in addition to that, I mean, if assuming you are going to go try to refine them, when would you pick to do it? I would pick the same time
The same
a
time,
year
yeah.
we found them the first time. I mean, that's just kind of common sense and nowhere else to really start. So
Yeah.
that's how the
Well,
date got picked.
you've got a few months to go before that comes up
Yeah.
again in
Well,
November.
we were supposed to be there this year, but COVID prevented it.
Okay,
So
yeah,
we had
makes
to
sense.
reschedule everything.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Uh, oh yeah, that reminds me. Like you said in another interview that you thought that it was perhaps the new capabilities of the radar that allowed you to see them this time, whereas you couldn't see them before.
I think that's definitely a possibility. And I didn't have any awareness of that at the time. I just kind of
All
put two
right.
and two together later. I knew there was a system upgrade, but it was above my clearance level, exactly the minute details of it. But I think that's possible. The upgrades to the system have suddenly allowed us to see something that had maybe been there for a long, long time. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing. I don't know if that's true or not. I
So
don't know what
what
else to
about
think.
like the skeptical viewpoint there, which is me, is what if this systems upgrade kind of introduced some problems into the system, like it became overly
That's
sensitive to certain things?
that's what I thought was happening. How do you square that away with Commander Fravor's actual calls on the object?
Yeah. Well,
How is that possible if it wasn't him?
I would square it
Is
away
Commander?
as
Can you tell me? Is
I know
Commander Fravor lying?
no,
Is
no,
he
I don't
lying?
think
You
he
tell me.
is. I don't think he
Okay.
is.
Well, then it
Yeah,
was a real object.
I
It
never
was a
rule
real
anything
object then.
out. Yeah. Well, but then what if, I mean, this sounds like pretty ridiculous. What if it was a coincidence? Like you're getting all these, like for 10 days, you're getting all these false returns. And then on one day, that just happens to coincide with one of the pilots spotting an unusual object. Maybe they weren't related.
I don't see how you. I don't see how you can argue that logically.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense at all.
No, no, it certainly seems a bit of a coincidence. But then, strange coincidences do happen, and this might have been just the one that did happen. But obviously, it doesn't
Okay,
seem like
let's say
it.
it was a coincidence. Let's say it was a coincidence. Uh, what did Commander Fravor see
I
in
don't
this
know.
coincidence
That's
scenario?
an
How?
interesting thing. Like from his description of it,
Yeah,
it sounds like he saw a tic tac shaped thing with little legs underneath it, and it was featureless. I
and it
think
was non-Newtonian in the way it operated. I mean, it was doing physically impossible things
Yeah,
based on the way it's called.
yeah, it's certainly a big puzzle. Yeah, and the thing
Well,
about it is
my
that
point, even if it is a coincidence, so what? You still have to explain what he saw.
yeah,
But it wasn't
yeah,
a coincidence.
and then of
I
course
know
there's the video as
I know you're
well.
being skeptical, and I respect that point of view.
Yeah.
But this was not a coincidence.
No, I
The
certainly I
object,
can't claim to have a.
the object that he intercepted was the same objects that I was tracking on radar.
Okay. Yeah,
I mean,
I don't have a good answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that. And to be honest, my main focus when I've been looking into these things has been looking at the videos. So all the other stuff is not certainly not an area of expertise of mine. And when I theorize about what Fravor might have seen, I think perhaps he might have seen some kind of I don't know, like a target device, like a towed target type thing that had got loose, and he perhaps misjudged the size of it and thought it was further away when it was actually closer to him, and then that made him misjudge the speed of it. But yeah, none of these explanations are very satisfying or particularly good. So I can't really claim to know much beyond.
Can I ask you a question, Nick? Because I'm
Sure,
curious about
sure.
what you're thinking. Assuming that these objects were real, you, um, what are they? Do you think they're probably man-made, or what would be your opinion in that case?
Well, if we're talking about things moving from 28,000 feet to 50 feet in 0.78 seconds, you've done the math there. You know that it's an impossibly high acceleration in terms of humans being in the craft, and it's also pretty much impossible in terms of human technology as we know it. So if these things are real things, then that would mean that technology exists to drive them that is way beyond anything that we know that we have. So that leads to two possibilities, really. Maybe three, like two and a half. It's either human technology or it's non-human technology. And if it's human technology, then it's either US technology or it's somebody else's technology, like the Russians or some evil super genius in the volcano. But the more likely thing,
the other half possibility
mm-hmm.
is there was something actually living, something alive.
Oh yeah, I guess that's another one. I guess that would be three actually.
Yeah, some sort of life form.
Yeah, like you talk about it happening consistently in that area, so it's something that's going from Catalina to Guadalupe. And I think people have mentioned. This is really kind of far out speculation. Like the whales migrate up and down that coast. They think it might have been some living entity following the whales. But this is obviously very, very speculative.
Possibility. We have to include that. I don't know.
I certainly wouldn't put that near the top of my list. I think I would probably put aliens above some kind of living creature.
Right. That's at the bottom of my list too. So
yeah, because it would have to have.
I have to include it as a possibility because I don't.
Sure, but essentially you're talking about supernatural beings at that point because it couldn't physically do that type of movement, or some kind of ethereal being, which again is a bit speculative.
Correct.
But, like I say, I keep things on the list even if they're way down on the list.
Yeah.
So you never accidentally.
I admitted this, so it seems crazy to even hear myself say that.
Well, yeah, but people thought it was crazy that rocks fell out of the sky at one point. So you lessons from history teach us to never 100% eliminate things, but also I think give them appropriate weight in your considerations. So even though I wouldn't say I 100% discount the idea of ethereal beings following whales, I think it's vanishingly small in terms of the probability.
Me too.
Yeah. All right. So I think that's the thing we covered. But let me just like quickly go over my little list of things here, make sure I haven't missed anything. Do you know anything about these tapes being taken away? What are your opinions on that controversy?
That's other people's testimony. That was not my situational awareness at the time. I didn't realize that it happened at the time, so I have no knowledge about that. Yeah. But I have to believe my shipmates when they tell me that.
But there's like some conflicting accounts there. Doesn't like David Fravor say that the tapes were overwritten and no one came on board to take them? Is that is there a reason why he would think that?
I don't know how. I don't know, but I don't know how you could claim that about. He wasn't on the Princeton. He was on the Nimitz. How would he know if someone came to the Princeton and took it?
Yeah. I must admit, I haven't really been following that exactly, so I'm not sure what he said. So I shouldn't really even delve into it. So, what would be your number one theory for what happened?
Man,
the top two, perhaps.
Something man-made.
Yeah.
I mean, assuming that they're real, Nick, I would rather believe there's something man-made than I would want to believe it's a UFO. Just so you know.
Yeah, it seems more straightforward.
Yeah, it seems more straightforward.
Yeah, because there's lots of implications.
Yeah. More easy to swallow, right?
Yeah.
But then again, I mean, this is a huge universe, and maybe it's a little naive of us to think we're the only ones in it.
Yeah, well, I certainly wouldn't rule out the possibility of visitors, but like you, I think because of the, as you describe it, non-Newtonian physics, I think you would need some. Personally, I would need some very strong evidence that these actual maneuvers actually happened. Now, I think from your perspective, you saw things on the radar in a much more direct way to me, which might make you more convinced than I would be about it. But I think the question is like, how do you?
Plus the eyeballs that the pilots had on the objects.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Were there
other pilots? It wasn't my eyeball. I'm trusting what they said.
Yeah.
Based on their.
They're telling you a description. So there was the other plane, the Hawkeye, and apparently there were crew members on that. I guess all of them say that they saw it.
PJ Hughes, who was a listed guy airborne at the time, they actually observed one of the Tic Tac objects go right past the airplane. So they saw it with their eyes too. They never had it on radar though. They saw it visually only.
Have you personally talked to anybody else who saw it directly?
I've spoken with Commander Fravor, obviously, and PJ Hughes, and I've never spoken with Underwood. So Fravor and Hughes are the only two I've ever spoken to that actually saw it with their eyeballs.
Right. Now, I interviewed Gary Voorhis for my podcast like about a year ago.
Yeah, he was a computer technician on board the Princeton.
Right.
He was a guy he's in charge of recording all this data and preserving it on the tapes.
Yeah.
If there's a mishap, we can reprint all the tapes and figure out what the hell happened. I mean, there's a reason why we data collect stuff, and it all goes back to safety.
So if the people who came on board to take those tapes, I guess the rationale would be one of two things: either they were trying to figure out what the heck this object was that was buzzing the ship, or they were trying to figure out what went wrong with the radar by analyzing the data. These are my one and two scenarios. Well, I guess 2 and 1 scenarios. But I was going to ask you something. But Gary Voorhis, he says he used the big eyes, the big binoculars on the ship to look at the objects. Do you remember people doing that? He said he would like go
I
into
did it
it was,
myself. I There was a couple days later. Of course, now after the Commander Fravers intercept happened, what the hell are they? So the next group that came, it was in the evening watch again. I picked a close one. I ran up to the ship and I actually correlated that object, but it was nothing special, Nick. It was just a glowing white light in the sky, and it didn't do anything when I was watching. It just kept going self tracking itself
right.
really slowly. But it was the same it was the same object I had on radar. What it was, I have no idea.
Yeah.
To me, it was just a boring white light.
Huh.
It didn't do anything fancy when I was watching.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting though that after such a thing happened, that there wasn't more of a response. And you said like the captain kind of acted uninterested in the whole thing, like, even afterwards.
I would describe him as a real skeptic, like you are.
Yeah.
I think he would agree with you on most points. Um, um, his only concern was safety of flight, and I was the one that convinced him to be concerned about
Yeah.
safety of flight.
And so, is your feeling then that he just he didn't give it enough thought, or do you think he knew something and there was something going on behind the scenes?
At the time, I thought the latter. I thought, okay, there's something going on here above my pay grade, and I'm just going to shut up about it. And
Yeah.
nothing that he said, it's just the way he was acting, that he knew something he couldn't tell me. I'm just guessing because I don't know. And that's when I
So
left it alone. I was like, you know what, this is above my pay grade and above my
yeah,
clearance
yeah.
level, and
I guess if
I'm just going to
that's
leave
the
it alone.
case, that would probably kind of point more towards a man-made thing. Would you
Something
say, like a secret
that's
test of some sort, or
yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah.
people talk about them maybe testing radar spoofing technology.
But again, how do you describe? How do you explain the visual context from the
Yeah,
pilots? If I mean, a radar spoof is something that's not real, trying to convince the radar that it is real. But if I have a pilot that goes and intercepts it and actually sees an actual physical object, how could that be radar spoofing?
yeah, but then again, like, what would be the point of these groups of five slow-moving objects drifting off the coast from a, you know, if they're human technology? What are they doing? It doesn't seem like a very practical thing. Like, what is it? Some kind of slow-moving drone or something like that?
I don't know.
But can
Yeah,
also,
why would they do that?
yeah,
Why would they? And why? And that's just not how tests are done, because never in my career did someone run a test on top of my test without telling me, because
yeah,
of the safety of flight concerns. I mean, it's illegal in terms of Navy doctrine and procedure. I mean, you can't do that.
yeah.
Not when it
It's
comes to
interesting.
safety of flight. You can't put objects in my play space and not tell me. What if? Because if I run into one, now we're all in trouble.
Yeah,
And break aircraft
yeah.
and maybe someone dies. You know?
Yeah, I guess unless they were just, you know, mostly virtual contacts and not real contacts, and maybe there's this one other contact as well. It's fascinating stuff. So I really appreciate you talking to me. Is there
Yeah,
anything else you think we haven't discussed?
we can do this again. Let's continue this. I've enjoyed this greatly, and maybe we can set it up where we got you can interview more than just me. It kind of been a group
Yeah.
thing. That
So
way, because I was unable to answer some of your questions, but maybe some of the other guys and gals can.
yeah, it'd be good
Set
to.
it
It
up.
was interesting hearing your account, because some of it is, you know, to be honest, I mean, it just seemed quite different to how Fravor described the encounter, you know, years later. Obviously, you know, you're recalling what he told you afterwards, and it'd be kind of interesting to try to reconcile all these you know, minor things, like what was the altitude at intercept and things like that, because you know there's I think we resolved some questions here, but it kind of raised some new ones as well.
One thing that we do agree on is he intercepted something.
Well, yeah,
on that blade.
he saw something.
And it was aware, and it was aware of him. And it maneuvered in ways that are unexplainable. I mean, we agree on all that. The minutia, what he thought happened after he got back to the ship, and what he thinks happened on board my ship. He can think whatever he wants.
Yeah. And then the Chad Underwood encounter, that seems a little bit different to how it was previously described. Like, I don't remember people talking about intercepting one of a group. I don't think he said he got that close to it either. So maybe that's something we could resolve somehow.
Yeah, we can resolve that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, he got close enough to film it on his atmosphere system, so.
Yeah. But you think he also got... You think he got close enough to see it?
5 miles? Is it 15 miles? Is it 20? I don't know.
Yeah.
But you got to remember, I wasn't sitting in front of the console.
I'm
walking to the front table, talking to the captain. I'm talking to the technicians. I'm talking to my air intercept controller. I'm talking to the electronic warfare operator. I'm trying to put all the pieces to the puzzle together in my head so I can come up with an identification.
Yeah, no, I remember you giving this description of you walking around the room on this long corded headset. It sounded like something from the movies.
How far Underwood was from the object when he filmed it, I don't know.
Yeah. But did you say he got to a merge plot situation?
What was that?
Did he get to a merge plot? Underwood?
No, again, I don't know how. I don't believe so, but I don't know how close he actually got to it because the thing took off.
Yeah. That's that's the whole. It's the problem with these videos. You get 30 seconds or a minute or something, and then you don't know what happened on either side of it. It's so frustrating. Yeah.
Dog's missing.
Yeah. All right, Kevin. So I just want to check you're okay. I want to check you're okay with me putting this up on YouTube. Is that all right?
Yeah, and you can even edit and cut out the parts you want. I don't care. Do whatever you want with it. I'm out there public and
cool.
So do what you need to with it, and I would like to do it again. I would like to include some other members of the team.
Yeah, well, let's get this out there and see what kind of people will probably pick up on various points of what you said, because I think some of it is actually new, at least new to some people, and we'll see what kind of reactions we get and what type of questions arise from it, and so maybe do it again. And
all right, thank you, man.
Hope the technology works next time.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
The snap.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Kevin. It's been it's been like an hour and a half.
Again, I appreciate your skepticism, man. I truly
no, and I appreciate your openness and willingness to talk. That's been very useful and interesting.
All right.
I'm gonna let you go. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.